Hi everyone, welcome to the Turning Point Tales podcast, where we interview people who have lost, failed, and had to rebuild themselves up from zero or close to zero. And today I have here Chris Bulick.
Bulick, Bullock. Everyone calls me Bullock, so I just kind of embrace it. But it's pronounced Bulick, officially.
Okay, I'm here with Chris Bulick, aka Ninja, and he's the host of the Good Faith podcast. Thanks for coming in here today, Chris.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Trevor.
Awesome. So share with us something that people usually wouldn't guess about you to start off.
Well, I guess, kind of like, I don't know if most people would guess it about me. I'm like a little bit of a nerd, actually. I love comic books. I love, like some cartoons. I love, like the whole superhero thing. I love finance. I'm like kind of mathematically minded. I always did really good in the mathematics courses in high school and college, like geometry and trigonometry and statistics and stuff like that. So I have like a very analytical mind, and I like to look at the world in terms of like figures and statistics more than a million little shades of gray sometimes.
All right. So detail oriented, would that be right then?
Yeah, about some things. Like, I definitely think I have like a mild form of OCD. I really like to control every variable of like my life, and in some respects, I wish it translated into all areas of my life. But like, my room is like a little bit messier than I'd like it to be. But I definitely think I'm like very detail oriented with a lot of my life.
Okay, I see. All right, detail oriented. Great. That's similar to me. And what do you do during the day then as your job, occupation?
So I'm a life skills coach. That's my 9 to 5 job. It's basically like a teacher for like a private school for autistic kids, and I'm in the adult life skills program. So once they reach college age, there's not a lot of support for that community once they get older than 21. So then they come to our program, and we take them to volunteer opportunities and take them to jobs, and all the stuff that their lifestyle entails.
Okay. All right. So grooming up the next generation, I see. Leading them,
Yeah.
and then, yep, making them useful and contributing to society. I like it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's dive in a little bit further into your story then. So the main idea of this podcast is to talk about people's setback and how they bounce back. Before the setback in your life where you hit a major low point, what were you chasing, believing, or building towards?
So I get, yeah, like, are you talking about in my active like alcoholism you're speaking about?
Yeah. Yeah. Before you hit a
Okay.
rock bottom.
I was always just chasing like a good time, a good fun time. I was chasing comfort. I was chasing short-term pleasures. Like everything that I've learned in the past few years, confirms that short-term pleasures are like lead to long-term discontentment. And so I was just always thinking about life in I was always just thinking about how I could be more comfortable in the next moment. I in turn for like a couple of decades set myself back for like those 2 decades. When it was all said and done, I had no money. I was physically very weak and unhealthy. I think I weighed like 110 pounds when I got sober, and now I weigh like 170. So I was like, I'm basically like right now at a good healthy weight for myself. So I was probably about like 60 pounds underweight, and I was like as pale as a ghost, and just by every single measurable metric, my life was not good. And that's primarily because I was just always chasing that short-term pleasure.
So once you went into alcoholism, so was it a sudden moment or was it like a slow unraveling that spiraled your life out of control?
Yeah, it was definitely more of like a slow unraveling, because kind of at first, like the consequences intensify as you go down this path of alcoholism. It's a progressively fatal disease, and like if a person's truly an alcoholic and they truly drink or do drugs alcoholically, then over any considerable period of time, their disease always gets worse, never better. So in the first year of being an alcoholic, you might, I don't know, scrape your knee, bump a car into a guardrail. You might, I don't know, get a detention from school or get suspended from school. But by year 20, those consequences are going to be, your best friends passing away. You like I know people who have lost limbs, people who have, taken lives by accident by getting behind the wheel of a car, or getting fired, or getting divorced. The consequences down the road of alcoholism always are just very, very intense. And it's, if people are fortunate and wise enough and self-aware enough to recognize the patterns, then they're gonna say like, oh, I better stop this before before it kills me or before I kill somebody else. But unfortunately, a lot of people go into the grave an active alcoholic.
Okay, yeah, definitely, yeah, something that doesn't really help or contribute to people's life, if they drink excessively or they cannot control the amount they drink. What made you decide to fight back, take and regain control of your life?
Well, honestly, like there wasn't like a white light experience. It's not like I was spoken to by like Moses in a burning bush or anything like that. All I can say is like I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. Like I was on automobile number 5 or 6 that I ran into the ground. I had gotten fired from, I don't know, 20, 30, 50 jobs in my life. And, I had just been fired from the last one. And now still to this day, that is the last job I've been fired from. I've had one job for the whole 3.5 or 4 years that I've been sober. I'm finally like an employable human being. I'm finally trustworthy. Same with the car. I've had this car for that whole time, and that's like, so like I'm finally starting to reap the benefits of being sober, and I'm like holding on to and respecting all of my property, and it's not like dematerializing up in smoke, because I'm destroying my life. My life is actually like building momentum instead of losing momentum.
So trying to take yourself out of that situation and then put yourself in a better place. Was there a conversation or someone that helped you through the journey to getting better?
Yeah, actually, my ex-girlfriend was very aware of this disease and aware of like the interventions that are in place for people like us. And because she had a mother who sadly passed away from this disease. And it happened maybe like 2 or 3 months before I decided to get sober. So yeah, like I think, and I believe she also is clean and sober as well to this day, my ex-girlfriend. So yeah, all of our friends and family were just like passing away due to this disease. And I don't know if you're aware of Philadelphia. In America, it's like maybe definitely in like all of America, Philadelphia is like the drug capital of America. We have like a really bad opioid problem. So a lot of people are just becoming dependent on opioids and losing their life sadly. So her mother was one of those people who fell victim to addiction to opioids. And yeah, so like we all know countless people in Philadelphia who suffer from the same addictions. And so like luckily there's a ton of good recovery, a ton of good like treatment centers and meetings for people to get clean and sober. But yeah, we like so she recognized that I was definitely not right, and she suggested that I go to a meeting, and so I did like the next day.
So she identified a problem and, kind of encouraged you to take a step and towards improving
Yeah.
yourself. So you joined an Alcoholic Anonymous group in Philadelphia, right? Just to
Yeah.
get your life back in check, okay? So you had the Alcoholic Anonymous support system. So what sort of habit or mindsets that you had to shift in order to, take yourself out of that bad situation you had?
Well, so I'm not exactly sure what parts of the anonymity that we're supposed to uphold. I think like some people are like whatever, it's not a big deal. Some people are like super strict, like you can't disclose any of it. But I'll just say about the 12 steps, because you can find the 12 steps anywhere, but basically the most important parts of the 12 steps are like one, recognizing that you have a problem, admitting that you are not normal. Normal people can have one or two drinks and they're not going to crave that next drink, but like an alcoholic, as soon as they have one drink, they want to have a million. The first step is recognizing that you are an alcoholic. Like any problem in the world, you can never come up with a resolution unless you have a clear picture of what the problem is. So that's the first step. The third step, and this is where a lot of people, the second and third step, this is where a lot of people get hung up and they're kind of stubborn. They want to avoid this. But the second and third step is coming to believe that there is a God, or if you don't want to call it a God, you could call it a higher power, or you could call it a divine creator, or some entity or deity that you are willing to like turn your power over to. You got to like tap into a higher power. So step 2 and 3 is believing in a power greater than yourself and admitting that you will turn your will over to that higher power. So you are no longer seeking to serve yourself, but you are more seeking to serve others. And so those are the next steps. And then steps 4 and 5 is about taking a thorough inventory. So you like write down all of the names of anybody who you have ever had a problem with in your entire life. And then you figure out what it was that you did, in the altercation or whatever. So you find where you're at fault for any animosity, for any beef that you ever had with somebody. You figure out what part you played in it, and then you discuss that, you disclose it to a sponsor or a spiritual advisor or your spouse, whoever is going to be your like accountability buddy. We call them a sponsor, but you don't like you just have to admit your faults to yourself, to your God, and to your sponsor, and then like you figure out what your character defects are, what are the things that are imperfect about you, what are the things that like block you off from the sunlight of the spirit, and then you pray to your higher power that they will be removed. And then you make amends. All the people who you have wronged in your entire life, you seek them out. You like initiate a coffee date, or a diner date, or I don't know, sit on a park bench and you let them know that you are trying to turn your life around and that you want to like make right all the wrongs that you have done to them. And then the final step is, once you have had a spiritual awakening as the result of those steps, you find another sick and suffering alcoholic and you take them through the steps.
That's great, man, with the 12 steps of how you gotta go through it, admit you're an alcoholic, and go through the steps of recovery. What was one other major life event that you went through that was a rough patch in your life?
We could talk about. I'm not sure how knowledgeable you are about the New York Stock Exchange, but like it's or even just like investing in anything. It's like a big interest of mine, And like I'm not sure how tapped into like geopolitics you are, but like I think it was in like super early April, Donald Trump said he was going to impose tariffs on like the whole entire world.
Yeah,
And
that one I know.
and we all in America thought like the sky was falling. You know, there was very few people who were like cool as a cucumber. Most people were like running around like their hair was on fire because, you know, there was the possibility that, you know, our entire global system of commerce was going to be like dismantled. So what I did stupidly, and this was dumb on my behalf, but I withdrew all of my money that was in the stock market that was, you know, making me all this profit, making me all these dividends, and I chose to invest in a like really risky asset, like a derivative, triple inverse derivatives ETF. You know, basically, if I could like put this into like the simplest terms, for every dollar that the Standard & Poor's 500, which is like our biggest, it's like this, it's the entire stock market in America. For every dollar that the Standard & Poor's 500 went up, my ETF went down $3. So I put all my money in there, and you know, like a day or two later, Donald Trump said, "No, just kidding. You know, like I'm gonna pause all the tariffs." I was just like, I was just talking a bunch of nonsense, and the stock market just flew up. You know, went up like, I don't know, $30, $40, $50 in one day. And so if you could do the math, if I had only one share of that, it would have lost like $150 or something. But I had like I had like a hundred or 200 shares of it and stuff. So I lost so much money that day, and it was like, it was traumatizing, and I hope I learned my lesson for good from that day.
Oh wow, I can relate. I've been through not stock market, but lost money in multiple five figures, and it definitely put me in a bad spot, and I was depressed. But that's why there's the saying: don't put all your eggs in one basket. You gotta diversify, spread your risk around different investments, so that if one goes bad, which it will, if you've diversified, at least one or two of your pots will go down. You don't lose all your money because you've spread out everything. So that's one of the major life lessons I had to learn. So put your eggs in different baskets, so that when one of them goes south, the others are still kind of carrying you through and building up your portfolio. About your finance journey, that you took a hit, which sucks. I hope you could find other investments to put your money into and then rebuild your investment portfolio. And now that you've been a sponsor to people in Alcoholics Anonymous, what's like one mindset or mantra do you live by now, so that you could influence other people and make an impact in society?
That's a good question. I'll say two. One that I love that I got from Michael Sartain is, I will not cheat, lie, or steal, nor will I tolerate anyone amongst me who does. I like that one a lot. And another good one is, if you want like high self-esteem, do esteemable things. So if you want to feel good, do good.
All right. That's a great code to live by. That's the first I've heard of. All right. Let's switch focus a little bit now. From your life and your podcast, you seem to talk about 4 pillars. So family, faith, fitness, and finance, and how these 4 pillars are important to be masculine as men in society. So can you elaborate further on these 4 pillars, like why it's so important? And can you give an example of when these 4 pillars that you believe in are tested?
Okay. Well, let's start with fitness, because like, first of all, the mind is part of fitness. Like your brain is physical, so everything that you think, everything that you feel is a result of how you are. So if you are like fat, and women are the selective sex, meaning that they referee which ones of us men get to like have the privilege of procreating, which of us men get to have the privilege of being attractive to them. And, like, you're simply not going to have a high quality of life if you do not prioritize being fit and healthy and attractive and, like, and holding on to a little bit of your youth and vitality that, you got at a young age. I think there's a quote that's like, if you do not make time for your wellness, then you will have to take time for your sickness. We're all going to die one day, but I would like to live a long and prosperous life before that day comes, and I think I can fend off the Grim Reaper for another, like, I don't know, 60, maybe 70. I would like to live, well into my 90s if it were possible. So I think that having, good cardiovascular health, having good pulmonary health, having good mental health, I think all these things are important to being a well-rounded physical specimen. On to finance, that's another one. A lot of people say money isn't everything, but money is like, and I'll quote Andrew Tate, like, money is like air, money is like water. Like, water and air are not everything, but try living a life without water or air. Like, you need water, air, and money to survive in this life, so, and there are a lot of forces out there that want to make money a very scarce resource. So, we have all the cards stacked up against us in order to acquire money and in order to save money, in order to spend money wisely. So I think it's very important that men, because once again, women are the selective sex, and if you don't think that they're selecting for wealthy men, you're sorely mistaken. Like, women are attracted to financially responsible and financially financially fit stewards of money. So if you are not a good steward of money, I have a saying on my podcast. I say all the time that money is a cruel mistress. If you're not paying attention to her, she'll leave you, and she will go cheat on you with someone who is gonna pay attention to her. So, like, I'm not saying you have to be a miser. You don't have to pinch every single penny, but you have to have a budget. You have to have investments that are, like, returning you cash flow. You have to, like, make sacrifices early in your life, so that way when you come to the end of your life, you can really enjoy yourself when you're not going to be able to earn anything. When you're earning potential, like, there's going to be a day when we retire and our earning potential is just the interest on our investments. Maybe there might be a little bit of socialized, in America we have Social Security. I'm sure most countries have, like, social programs. Faith and family go hand in hand. I believe, and, like, I have this debate with my friends all the time. I ask them, because my friends are, like, anti-natalists. They think that there's too many people on Earth as it is, and that we need to stop having children and stuff like that because they think the Earth is overpopulated. But, like, I really don't see many purposes to life for humans other than procreating.
Do you have an example of when one of these four pillars were tested in your life?
Well, definitely my financial pillar, as discussed earlier, was definitely tested, on April, I think it was like April 2nd or whatever Liberation Day was. I want to say April 2nd or April 3rd. Definitely my financial pillar was tested on that day. And it's like my financial pillar is getting tested every day. Every time, somebody's talking about taking a trip to Fiji, Bali, or Hong Kong, or wherever, and they're like, you should totally come with us, like, I would love to. I would love to spend my life just traveling to all these exotic destinations, but right now I'm not in a financial position to do that. I need to be a responsible steward with my money because, like, when I'm on my deathbed, I don't want to regret not having a loving family that is around me because I went to a bunch of beaches and dicked off with my money in my 30s. I'd much rather position myself financially to have a family, and so that's kind of how those two pillars are tested, all the time. And yet, like, same with faith. Like, my faith is tested all the time. There are times when I go years without any sign that like God is taking care of me or something like that. But you just gotta stick around and hold out hope for that next miracle, because it will come, and I believe that God does answer every single prayer. Sometimes the answer to your prayer is no, so you just gotta like continue to pray, continue to have faith that there's there's a miracle coming. You don't know how long it's gonna be, and fitness, yeah, like my fitness is also tested all the time. I'm always trying to increase my physical aptitude. Like I'm always trying to lift heavier weights and run on the treadmill for like a longer duration. I'm slowly pushing my limits up in all my physical,
Cool, man. Definitely should, yeah. Keep my 4 pillars in check now that you've, taught me a little bit about how they go hand in hand: family, faith, finance, and fitness. I gotta make sure I work on that too, because I'm a family man. I have 1 daughter. I have a wife, daughter, and a dog. So family of 4 to look after. So gotta keep my finances in check and be a good steward of my money. All right, Chris. So you have a cat by the name of Clark Kent, and so Superman must be one of your favorite comic book characters. So, care to share with us a little bit about why Superman as a character is so captivating in your life?
Well, so I really started to like Superman from this show called Smallville, and that's like Superman in high school, and he's got the girlfriend, and he's actually like a little bit of a beta. He's like very shy. He's afraid to make a move on his crushes all the time. He's like a very meek man, which is like kind of endearing, especially when I was, I think I used to be like a little bit blue pill, and I can relate to that, to being like very timid and like afraid to approach women. But I love Superman because, like, first of all, it's pretty appropriate for this show, Turning Point Tales, and I think that's one thing that's important in turning the corner and like to continue to endure through adversity is hope. And that's what Superman's like his S crest. Maybe like it's obviously like very cliche and taking a lot of creative liberties, because we all know that like the creator just wrote an S, but the folklore behind it is that is Kryptonian that is the Kryptonian symbol for the House of El, and it means in Kryptonian hope. So like Superman is like the man of hope, and he's Krypton's last hope. He like, if you don't know about Krypton was like a failing planet for a lot of the reasons why I think Earth will eventually fail, is because we're mining all the resources out of our Earth, and that's what the Kryptonians were doing. They were mining all the resources out of the Earth, and so the core of Krypton became very destabilized, and what ended up happening is Krypton exploded, and but right before Krypton exploded, and I believe the Kryptonians were beyond natural childbirth at that point. They were so advanced that they were artificially inseminating, like incubation pods, and that's how all their population was birthed. But Superman was the first natural birth on Krypton in like, centuries. Right before Krypton exploded, Jor-El and Lara, I believe, are Superman's biological parents. Right, and I got my cat meowing right now. Hold up, let me let him in real quick.
All right.
Right before Krypton exploded, Jor-El and Lara gave natural childbirth to Kal-El. That's his official name, and they put him in a spaceship and blasted him off to Earth. Where he could have a hope of surviving. And then he gets to Earth, and everybody, they keep his powers a secret for as long as they can, but like as soon as the Earthlings discover what Superman is, they're naturally like afraid of him, because people are afraid of what they don't understand. He's like he's an alien, he's a foreign invader, he's got the power to like destroy planet Earth or enslave all the Earthlings, and he obviously is a very good man, and he would never do that, but naturally, Earthlings are afraid of him, and they do a lot to wrong him if they can, and he's got like an unflappable hope in humanity. He truly believes that humanity is worth protecting.
All right. Since you talked about hope right through Superman, I want to ask about the episode of your podcast about a drowned rat experiment.
Okay. So it's an experiment that took place, I think, in like the 30s or the 40s, like a long time ago. And this one side, because this this experiment would never fly these days. It was very cruel to animals, but the results were astonishing because this one scientist, and I don't have the study up in my on my phone right now, but if you watch my podcast, guys, the Good Faith Podcast, if you watch it, I talk all about the specifics, but basically this scientist wanted to see if hope was if you could measure hope, if you could inspire hope. So what he did was he took a bunch of rats and he put them in like a gigantic beaker of water, and he just let them like swim there until they die. And so the first subjects that he studied, they lasted about like 6 minutes just treading water before they drowned to death. Then in the second control group, he let the rats go 6 minutes, and right before they were about to drown to death, he would pick them up out of the water and rescue them. And then he'd let them catch their breath, and he would put them back in the water to see how long they could tread in the water with hope. And what he found was, I'm not exactly sure, but the rats that had the hope, the rats that had been rescued, I think they lasted up to like 16 hours or something crazy like that, treading water, because they knew that there was a higher power, albeit this cruel scientist. They knew that there was hope that if they just held on a little bit longer, they would be rescued by this scientist, and it gave them the ability to endure treading water for like 1,000 times longer of a duration.
Interesting. I should read up on that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because science wants to measure and find out everything, find answers, but they're trying to measure hope. So that's an interesting experiment. But obviously, like you say, it wouldn't fly these days.
Yeah. It was very, very cruel. Yeah, very cruel towards animals. But I think we're lucky that that experiment was conducted, because it can show a tangible consequence of having hope. It can cause people to, it can cause humans, it can cause rats, it can cause all animals to endure beyond their natural limits of experiencing and suffering if they just have a little bit of hope.
Okay, next. So from your podcast, the Good Faith Podcast, what separates your brand from other content creators in the podcast space?
That's a good question. I don't take myself too seriously. I try to be funny as much as I can. I try to be kind to all of my guests. A few content creators in this, red pill space, they'll just invite young girls on, and they'll just have the young girls talking, and they'll kind of humiliate them and demean them just so they can get clicks and views on their episodes and stuff like that. I have not reached that point yet, and I hope I never do reach that point where I'm just intentionally humiliating my guests. I really try to prop up my guests and promote their works and their endeavors as best as I can. And instead of just going down one avenue and getting pigeonholed pigeonholed into just being like a religious podcast, or just being a dating podcast, or just being a pop culture podcast, or just a finance podcast. Like I think we're like very broad in terms of like the subjects that we cover. And so I think that's what makes us kind of unique, is there's like nothing really off the table, so long as you're not spewing hate speech on my podcast, so long as you're not like, slinging out, racial slurs and stuff like that. I'll let people say anything, we don't have like a code of conduct, I let people curse all they want, as long as you're not, like I said, as long as you're not showing, like ample bigotry and nudity, I'll like allow you to express yourself, for the whole internet to see.
And you've been in podcasting longer than I have. Who have been your sources of inspiration that you've drawn from? Sources of inspiration to run your podcast or life in general?
So I would say I have like three big inspirations. My biggest inspiration is Kevin Samuels. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of him, but he's now deceased, but he was a content creator and podcaster in I think like he lived in Atlanta, Georgia when he passed away, but he was from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, and he was just a small town Christian guy from Oklahoma, and he went on to become like a very successful image consultant and like a brand ambassador, and he had like a pretty successful podcast up until he passed away. In his like, I don't even think he reached like 60 years old, and he had heart failure. But he was very blunt and very direct and like very honest with his guests. And some people don't like that. In fact, a lot of people don't like that. A lot of people want to be told what they want to be told. They don't want to be told what they need to be told. And so like he was branded as like a as a boorish hater, as like a as a mean person. But I think that if you really watched him, I think his message was actually very helpful to the people who were able to listen to what he was trying to say. And he was trying to tell women to have realistic standards and to get into better shape, and he was trying to tell men to like take responsibility for their life and to like get their clean up their act, and so he was really like trying to like improve relationships, because in America, I don't know, I imagine it's probably pretty similar in Australia, like the relationships are becoming untenable, so he was doing his best to help men and women so that they could present their best selves to each other and come together and get married and live happily ever after, And like my second big influence is Brian Atlas. So he's got a podcast called the Whatever Podcast. It's also similarly to Kevin Samuels. Unfortunately, it's not a route I would like to go down, but like kind of predicated on demeaning and demoralizing, like the young women that come on, he just invites like 21-year-old women that are naive and don't have a lot of experience, and they tend to say some stupid things because they're inexperienced and they're naive and they're young and they're at their peak sexual market value, and they don't understand that life is going to hit them really, really hard in a few years, and they're not going to be on top of the world forever. But right now they're all fueled up by ego and by arrogance and by all this confidence that they they aren't going to have forever. But they say some dumb things. But his podcast is very sensational, and I really enjoy how business oriented Brian Atlas is, because he's if you just watch one of his podcasts, first of all, his episodes go for like 6, 7, 8 hours long. He's just doing like a 7-hour long podcast. It's his like full-time job, and he's just raking in dough. People love to watch his show because people love to watch a train wreck. Like nobody wants to turn away and not see, like a beautiful disaster. So I really respect what Brian Atlas is able to cultivate in his podcast, because it's very successful. It's got to be like maybe the most popular podcast, well, next to Joe Rogan's, but like Brian Atlas is, if you haven't seen the Whatever podcast, definitely check it out. And thirdly, the Dave Ramsey Show. He's like the hillbilly financier. He lives in Nashville, Tennessee, and real estate tycoon worth of like $500 million or something like that. And he has like a very bare bones method of getting people out of debt, and he's very faith oriented. Dave Ramsey's show is he's got a great message, and he just genuinely wants to help people get out of debt and to become like wealthy, and some people call his show and they're in $100,000 of debt and they're totally lost. They have no idea where to go, and he helps them like pick up the pieces and turn their life around.
Yeah, but I've watched his shorts before, but yeah, I should dive in deep into his content, because can never get enough of investment advice on how to clean up your finances. Okay, so Chris, what are your goals in the next year, in the coming year? What are some milestones you're trying to achieve in the next, 6, 12, 18 months?
In terms of being a YouTube creator, and you're on YouTube, right?
Yes.
Yeah, is that like is that your main platform that you're hoping to grow?
Well, no, these days social media I want to spread out, so long form content of this podcast will be on YouTube, and then the short form will be on obviously YouTube Shorts, TikTok, and Instagram. So I'll spread them out into at least 3 platforms. Long form will obviously be in YouTube, and then shorts will be on YouTube Shorts, TikTok, and Instagram.
In the podcasting space, video editing is definitely something I want to improve at. And next weekend, I'm starting a new segment on my podcast. It's going to be called the Nasty Ninja Food Review. I got this best friend named Nasty, and him and I are going to go around Philadelphia and like critique food. So that's going to require us to do a lot of video editing. Right now, with the current iteration of my podcast, it's live, so I don't have to like video edit anything. I can if I want to just put out the long form episodes every single week, and no editing required. But I do think in order for me to like hit that next level of virality, I'm going to need to start making a lot more shorts. That's a goal that I have. I know in order for your YouTube channel to become monetized and my YouTube channel to become monetized, you need 3,000 hours of watch time. So my next immediate goal is for another like 500 hours of watch time on my channel, and that will be the last milestone that I need to become monetized. So I'll say becoming monetized on YouTube. Yeah, I would like to in the next 12 months put out another at least 52 more episodes. Like if I could only do 1 episode a week, then I'll hit that goal. And I think because this year, in my first year, I think we made like about 59 episodes, like a few weeks where I went over my pace to hit my goals. So I'll say another 500 hours of watch time, another 52 episodes. I'd like to continue advancing in my 9-to-5 job and make another pay raise so I could keep on outpacing inflation. And I'd like to do my best to clean up my financial mess that I caused myself in early April. So I'd say if I could in the next 12 months get halfway out of that hole, that would be very, very good, because it doesn't feel good to be so behind the 8 ball. And I'd say I think it'd be cool I've had this car for a while now. It's it's got about 100,000 miles on it, and it's kind of like a little bit of a beater. I'd like to get if I could get a new Ford Mustang, I think that'd be pretty cool. And I'm about to move out to a new apartment in a month or two, so I'd really just like to have a nice new car, a nice new apartment, and to really have really just have my life more together. Have like an abundant social life, and get my Instagram on a higher level. Maybe start dating more women and stuff like that, so I can move closer to the family portion of my pillars.
All right, great goals to have, man. Thanks for sharing. Well, that's all from me. Thanks for coming on the show. Care to share a little bit about where people can find you on social media?
So guys, my Instagram handle is Bulik. Christopher Bulik is my Instagram. That's my Facebook too. My podcast is on every major podcast platform, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, RSS.com, Amazon Podcasts, Samsung Podcasts, the Good Faith Podcast, and it's the one of the short little white guy in front of the Philadelphia skyline. There's another Good Faith Podcast. They have like a yellow and yellow and brown color scheme. That's not me. I'm just the Good Faith Podcast with the guy standing in front of the skyline. So I hope you will all subscribe to me, and I'll be sending people your way, Trevor, because I know how difficult it is to get a podcast up off the ground. It's very difficult to put yourself out there and to be honest and vulnerable, and just like Malcolm Gladwell talks about in The Tipping Point, you're the turning point. We'll talk about the tipping point. At some point, if you just keep doing the right thing over and over and over again consistently, you'll eventually hit that turning point and you'll just explode. So the name of the game is just to hold on to hope and to just continue doing the right thing, and eventually you'll get that huge breakthrough, and it'll all be history from there.
Thanks, man. Words of wisdom right there.